Myst, Might, Mayhem. By Han Jung-Wheolya. Chapter 332. Mastermind. Part 1. Murmur. The Tang clan's executives and warriors, who were watching the situation outside from the Tang clan's walls, were stirred. It was because of the tremendous confrontation unfolding before their eyes. Clan leader. Just what is going on? Deputy head Tang Cheolyang's mouth was agape and couldn't close. That was because the confrontation unfolding before their eyes had completely transcended the category of ordinary martial artists. Even when watching a confrontation between experts at the peak of the transcendent realm, the level would be considered high. However, this was not something that could be evaluated like that. Is this a confrontation between grandmasters? In the eyes of Tang Cheolyang, who had reached the extreme pinnacle stage of the transcendent realm, he couldn't even see their movements, and he could only hear the sounds of something clashing. But every time they clashed, it was as if heaven and earth were being recreated, and everything around was being devastated. The ground was cracking, shattering, and it was a complete mess. In between, there were movements that could be seen with the eyes, and at those moments, the ultimate techniques of the transcendent realm were rampant, leaving them speechless. What the hell is happening? Putting aside the green forest, why are such monsters here? How would I know that? The Tang clan's executives were dumbfounded. Of course, since it was a high-level confrontation, they were also martial artists, so they couldn't take their eyes off it, but they were gradually becoming worried. Why were these people doing this here? Sigh. Tang In-hei, the head of the Tang clan, felt the same way. He knew who that muscular man was. Since he was wearing a golden bracelet, he recognized that he was the being who had been protecting the Tang clan for a long time. But he didn't know who the one who appeared now was. He seemed to have no relation to the Green Forest, but seeing him fight against that family, who were like the Tang clan's protectors, there was a very high probability that he was an enemy of the Tang clan. What should I do about this? It felt better when the Green Forest was surrounding them. Just as an expert who had barely surpassed the peak and reached the early stage of the transformation realm couldn't challenge the dominance of the 8 stars, who were considered the top experts in the martial arts world, those two people had clearly surpassed the peak of peaks. It's impossible. If they were to fight, he would barely be able to endure for about 10 seconds. Just by seeing that Green Forest fighting king Sukpaeung, whose external martial arts had reached the peak, had suffered a defeat, the difference in skill was evident. Just who were they? Both of them looked like they were in their 20s, not even reaching their prime based on their appearance. If they had reached such a realm, had they undergone rebirth and returned to a youthful state, not aging at all? Tang In-hei, who had been continuously clicking his tongue, fell into contemplation. Among them, the only certain thing was that it would be best for that family's monster, who claimed to be the Tang clan's protector, to win. But if that person with the brutal and tyrannical martial prowess were to win, the Tang clan might face the worst enemy in its history. Or should I hope for a mutual defeat? Looking at it now, the confrontation seemed to be even, like a fierce battle between a dragon and a tiger. If one side doesn't have overwhelming martial prowess or luck is not on their side, a confrontation between evenly matched experts never ends without injuries. In that case, he might have to keep looking for an opportunity. If the monster, not the protector, wins, he might have to seize that moment. Boom 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 boom. Huh? At that moment, he saw Yumujin rolling on the ground. Seeing this, Tang clan leader Tang In-hei's eyes trembled. He had hoped for Yumujin to win, but judging from the blood flowing from his abdomen and back, he had suffered penetrating wounds. That meant the outcome of this confrontation had become clear. Then what about that monster? Tang In-hei turned his gaze with a slight hope. He saw Mok Jiangun barely maintaining his posture with trembling hands. Although not as much as the protector, that bastard also seemed to have exhausted his internal energy and was heavily injured. Tang In-hei's eyes sharpened. Perhaps he could seize an opportunity. Now, within 1 or 2 moves, the match will be decided. If not now, there may not be another chance. At that moment, clan leader? Just what is going on? Ah. At the voice coming from behind, Tang Yanhei turned his head with a troubled expression. The one who called him was none other than Yi Sana, the granddaughter of the Holy Fire Priestess. After he left in the middle of their conversation, she had come out, puzzled by the sound of booming coming from outside and the constant stirring of the Tang clan warriors. With this, Tang Yanhei waved his hand and said, "Go to the villa area. If you stay here, it might become dangerous." Gulp. Tang Yanhei stopped mid-sentence and swallowed his dry saliva. What? The air was becoming so heavy that it was suffocating to breathe. From behind, an immense energy that stimulated not just his chi sense but all 5 senses was emanating, but he didn't know what was happening. He thought the confrontation was almost over, but why did the energy become even stronger? It was a moment of confusion. Boom. Before his words could even finish, a tremendous boom erupted, and all the buildings of the Tang clan shook, and the ground trembled. Startled by this, Tang Yanhei hurriedly turned his head. Then, countless fragments and hazy dust were rushing towards the Tang clan's side. Whoosh! With this, Tang clan leader Tang Yanhei raised his hand and emitted a powerful force with his profound internal energy to block the flying fragments. Clang 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 clang. After all, he was one of the 8 stars, so this wasn't a difficult task. As he blocked the fragments, some of the dust cleared, and there he saw Yu Jin, whose entire body's skin had turned black and muscles had compressed as if condensed. Yu Jin was extending his fist, and in that direction, nearly 20 jang, approximate 66 meters, was completely devastated in a fan-shaped area, leaving his mouth agape. Was his energy not completely exhausted? Tang Yanhei was dumbfounded. He had thought the protector had almost been defeated, but he didn't expect him to have such hidden strength. No, was it even correct to call this hidden strength? To this extent, it was fair to say that he hadn't used his full power. It's an unbelievable punch. Tang Yanhei couldn't hide his shock, feeling intimidated. If nearly 20 jang could be devastated with just a single punch, if he directly confronted it, not only would his entire body be torn apart, but he wouldn't even be left intact. He's truly a monster. Why hadn't such a monster-like being made his debut in the martial arts world? If he stepped forward even now, the landscape of the martial arts world would be overturned, and it would change from the 6 heavens to the 7 heavens. Those who received the title of heaven and reached the pinnacle of the martial arts world were monsters who had transcended human limits. That person possessed the martial arts befitting that. However, look at that. That's impossible. Exclamations burst out from here and there. Wondering why, he saw that in the place where the dust had cleared, 2 chi-controlled sword energies were rotating in a crossed pattern, creating a curtain. Seeing this, Tang clan leader Tang Yanhei was left speechless. He thought the confrontation was almost over, but seeing the strength they had revealed, they hadn't used their full power. This was truly a confrontation between monsters. At that moment, at the voice coming from the side, Tang clan leader Tang Yanhei frowned and sighed. While his attention was captured by those monster-like beings, at some point, Yi Sana, the granddaughter of the Holy Fire Priestess, had climbed onto a platform set up to allow a view beyond the wall. With this, didn't I tell you to go quickly? This is not a place for you to be now. At that moment, thud. Yi Sana knelt on the spot, crossed her hands on her shoulders, and her eyes turned red. Startled by her sudden behavior, Tang clan leader Tang Yanhei asked in confusion, "Why are you acting like this?" "It's him. He has come." "What do you mean by him?" "Thank you. I sincerely thank you, clan leader." As she suddenly expressed her gratitude, Tang clan leader Tang Yanhei had a look of incomprehension. Why was this child acting like this? Then, she looked at Tang Yanhei with teary eyes and said, "I had hoped that you would make the right choice, and it seems my prayers and wishes have been answered." "Sana, what are you?" At that moment, Tang Yanhei's expression froze. Could it be that she was talking about that? As he thought that, she continued. I was worried that you might make a grave mistake, caught up in desire, but seeing him come here to protect the Tang clan, it seems you have made the right choice. I sincerely apologize for doubting your words even for a moment. What? Isn't he fighting that monster to protect the Tang clan? Tang Inhei's breath was caught in his throat for a moment. She was misunderstanding the situation. The one who was protecting and the one who was trying to pose a threat. But thanks to this, Tang Inhei could finally understand the identity of that monster-like being. Could it be that he was the being from the prophecy that Yi Sana had said she saw through the precognition of the Holy Fire Priestess? Huh. How could this happen? Tang Inhei recalled the conversation he had with her. She had definitely said Grandmaster Munno leaving even grandmother and hiding him was probably to protect him. To protect him? Yes. Since the wings he needed to spread were torn off, no matter how great he is still extremely weak. If he were to encounter enemies, she couldn't continue. She was afraid of such a situation. Clan leader. As you said, I have revealed everything I know. So please help Grandmaster Munno. A crisis is approaching him. Through this, Tang Inhei could deduce one fact. If the prophecy were to come true unconditionally, would there be a reason to worry about what would happen in the future like this? If the outcome was predetermined, all of it would be meaningless. But the fact that she was so worried meant that the prophecy was not something that would be fulfilled unconditionally, but that variables could arise at any time and change accordingly. If that was the case, this prophecy could be an indicator to respond to any dangers or hardships. It's tempting. The power to respond in advance to what would happen in the future. This was a tremendous ability that anyone would find tempting. You're coveting something you shouldn't covet. I shouldn't covet it? Don't you think it's more problematic for such a dangerous power to be in the hands of a group that promotes deception and misleading the people? Rather, it's right for such a dangerous power to be handled not by the likes of you, but by those who can uphold justice and righteousness. You're attaching a good-sounding cause. In the end, you're admitting that you're caught up in your own greed. Cough, cough. Grit. Indeed, he really disliked this fellow Munno. No, it had been like that for a long time. His grandfather, the Lord of 10,000 Poisons, Thousand Poison Hand Tang Yunzhang, had tried to pass on the secrets of the family to this fellow, who was just a branch family member with thin blood ties. If his father and he hadn't dissuaded him, such a thing would have really happened. Perhaps his ill-fated relationship with this fellow had continued since then. Talk all you want. In the end, you, who are addicted to the formless poison and will soon cross over to the netherworld, can do nothing. Cough cough, Seeing the fellow's pale and weakened appearance, he felt a bit refreshed now. Since he was skilled in poison techniques to the extent that even his grandfather acknowledged him, preparing the formless poison as a precaution had become a divine move. No matter how much of a fellow he was, once addicted to this, he couldn't move. Then, shall we finish it? Swish. Swish. With the sword he had prepared, Tang Inhei drew a mark on the immobile Munno's body, a vertical line passing through the center of the character too. This was the mark of that secret organization or whatever, wasn't it? The corners of Tang Inhei's mouth rose sardonically. He had heard that what the secret society fellows really wanted was not the ability of prophecy, but to deal with the being in that prophecy. Those fellows should be grateful to him. He had made what they wanted come to them on its own. It's killing two birds with one stone. With this, it was done. If she lost everything, in the end, that child Sangha would rely on him even more. Chapter 333. Mastermind. Part 2. How did it go? What about Grandmaster Munno and that person? To the question of Yi Sana, the granddaughter of the Holy Fire Priestess, Tang Inhei, the head of the Sichuan Tang clan, casually replied, as you said, I informed them. Fortunately, it seems they arrived before those people could find them. Ah, that's really fortunate. Didn't I tell you not to worry too much? Thanks to your early warning, we prevented a tragedy, so it's fortunate. Yes. You're right. But why aren't you informing the other order members? For example, your grandmother or those in high positions in the order? At his question, Yi Sala shook her head. And with a voice mixed with a sigh, she said, "The fact that this power possessed by grandmother has passed on to me is because grandmother has betrayed the will of holy fire." The will of holy fire? Yes. The order members, regardless of their position, will have to pay a price if they betray the will of holy fire. A price? So that's why you told me not to inform your grandmother? Yes. I don't know why grandmother betrayed holy fire's expectations, but she must have crossed a line that shouldn't have been crossed, so this happened. A line that shouldn't be crossed. What could that be? She was so obsessed with the cult that came from Persia. But did she suddenly change her mind in her old age? As he was puzzled, Yi Sala carefully asked him, "By the way, clan leader, when will I be able to meet that person and Grandmaster Munno?" "Ah. When, you ask? Well, let's see. Since I've evacuated them to a safe place, I think it would be fine to bring them back depending on the situation or when there's an opportunity. Can I know where they have been evacuated to?" At her persistent questioning, Tang clan leader Tang In-hei unknowingly sighed and replied in an irritated voice, "I had them take refuge in the outskirts, so even I, the clan leader, don't know the exact location." At his answer, Yi Sala looked at him for a moment with a suspicious gaze. Realizing his mistake, the clan leader changed his expression and spoke in a gentle voice. "The exact location could be leaked in the process, so those who escorted them to the outskirts didn't even inform me. But once they have taken refuge, I will soon find out, so don't worry." He thought he had handled it well. However, once suspicion started, it couldn't be easily quelled. After that, Yi Sala frequently visited Tang In-hei and kept urging him to find out when she could hear from them. With this, Tang In-hei was looking for an opportunity. Originally, he had intended to inform them that they had failed to avoid the pursuit of the secret society and eventually lost their lives. However, since she had become suspicious of him due to a single mistake, he had been delaying it. Tang clan leader Tang In-hei couldn't hide his perplexity with a stiffened face. She, who possessed the power of prophecy, referred to that unidentified person as him while looking at him. How could this happen? Why did that person appear here and fight against the Yu family, who could be considered the Tang clan's protectors? Tang In-hei's eyes trembled. Could it be that he knows something? No. That can't be. What Yi Sala was concerned about was that the person referred to as him in the prophecy was so weak that he could be described as feeble. But is that feeble? No, in the first place, it's a mystery how he even survived. Munno, the only protector he could rely on, had also died from the formless poison, and he had deliberately left a mark to make him find the secret society on his own. How could that bastard, who should have been dead, appear here? The only one who knew this truth was himself. To ensure that no one would know, he had acted alone, so there was no risk of it being revealed. Only one guy got involved, but since he was also addicted to the formless poison and fell off a cliff, he was practically dead. Then why was that bastard here? As he was puzzled, Yi Sala's voice was heard. "Clan leader?" At her call, Tang In-hei's mind became even more complicated for a moment. What should he do in this situation? That person, no, that monster-like bastard, was clearly targeting the Tang clan, seeing him fight the protector like that. But the Tang clan had no particular grudge against that bastard. If that's the case, he knows something. If not, there would be no reason for him to come here like this. Tang In-hei's hand trembled slightly. It was because he was extremely tense. Even though the formless poison technique had nearly been perfected after 3 generations, the opponent was a monster who had surpassed the peak of peaks and reached the level of a Grand Master. Even with the advantage of poison, he had no confidence in defeating such a monster. If that bastard was determined to kill him, gulp. Tang In-hei swallowed his dry saliva and slowly turned his head to look at the Tang clan's executives and warriors clinging to the wall. They seemed unaware of how much danger they were in. It was natural since they didn't know the reason. Is it at least fortunate that I sent that fellow to the Righteous Alliance? The people here were not all of the Tang clan's forces. According to the alliance agreement, each sect and martial arts family had to send about 30% of their forces to the main hall and branches of the Righteous Alliance. Because of this, his son Tang Renyu, the young elite disciples of the Tang clan, and his younger brother, the internal head Tang Yuan, had gone to the Righteous Alliance. Clench. Tang Inhei bit his lip tightly as he looked at the Tang clan's warriors. I'm sorry. No matter how much he racked his brain, there were only two paths that came to mind now. If the protector of the Yu family wins by luck, they could get through this without any incidents, but if the opposite situation occurs, the Tang clan would face their worst enemy. If that happens, they might face the crisis of annihilation. With this, he had to choose whether to risk his life and fight that monster bastard together with them, or quietly escape alone while that bastard was still fighting the former member of the Yu family, hoping for the future. If that monster bastard had come here with a desire for revenge against Mun No, no one here might be able to survive. Swish. Tang clan leader Tang Inhei turned his head and looked at Yi Song-a. He had already made his choice. Deputy head. Take this child Song-a to the villa for a moment and come back. Keep an eye on the situation. Understood. He's being troublesome. Tang clan leader Tang Inhei clicked his tongue as he loaded the unconscious Yi Song-a, whose acupoint had been sealed, into the carriage. She had realized that something was wrong and tried to escape. As a result, he had no choice but to knock her unconscious. Sleep for a while. It will only make things more complicated if you're awake. Go. Tang Inhei personally took the coachman's seat and grabbed the reins. Fortunately, thanks to all the Green Forest bandits retreating, almost all of the Tang clan's forces had gathered at the main gate. Since he had sent the remaining guard warriors to the front, there was no need to be cautious. He had to hurry and get out of here. Clop clop. With that, Tang Inhei drove the carriage and left through the back gate. The carriage had only gone about 10 jang when. Clop clop. At that moment, the sound of rough hoofbeats and wheels was heard from somewhere. Wondering what it was, the bushes rustled, and then a horse that looked much larger than an ordinary horse appeared, and then a bald monk-like person appeared, driving a carriage. At first, he was puzzled, but then he tried to turn the reins to change direction. However, go. The carriage that had burst through the bushes changed direction as well and blocked the path. Angered by this, Tang Inhei was about to raise his voice at the person driving the carriage, but then he frowned. That person, could it be the demonic demon fist sage Jia Jiamzhong? He realized who it was by looking at his appearance. Since the notoriety of the three madmen was so high, most martial artists were familiar with their appearance. This was also the case for Tang clan leader Tang Inhei. Why has Jia Jiamzhong come here? Except for one of the three madmen, the other two were close to being neutral, but their conduct itself was not very good, so most martial artists treated them as part of the evil faction. Tang Inhei also felt the same way. Following the Green Forest bandits, even that crazy bald monk had come. He had no idea what was going on. Then, someone jumped down from the carriage. Tap tap tap. There were three people, none other than Mok Jiangun's subordinates, the masked Ma Arehian, Siap Chun, and Mong Muyak. Jia Jiamzhong also got up from the coachman's seat and opened his mouth. Is that guy really the clan leader or whatever that the Lord wants to catch? Clan leader or whatever? Tang Inhei was dumbfounded by his rough expression. Although he was notorious as one of the three madmen, he was the head of the great Sichuan Tang clan and one of the 8 stars, who could be considered the top experts of the martial arts world. Regardless of the righteous or evil factions, their status itself was different. However, what? Tang Inhei frowned as he looked at Ma Arehian, who was wearing a mask. The crazy bald monk wasn't the problem. No matter how he looked at it, that masked guy seemed to have surpassed the peak, even though he was trying his best to restrain his energy. This level could be considered comparable to the elders of the 9 great sects. Moreover, those two are also not ordinary. Both of them were experts who had reached the extreme peak of the transcendent realm. Tang Yanhei's eyes were filled with wariness. If it was just Jia Jiamzhang alone, he could have dealt with him with his overwhelming martial prowess, but if there was someone who had reached the realm of a superhuman beyond the peak, the situation was different. "Who are you guys?" Rumble. Tang clan leader Tang Yanhei deliberately revealed his energy and spoke to them. The purpose was to show an overwhelming appearance and make them retreat on their own. Although it was quite annoying to have an expert who had surpassed the peak and 3 experts who had reached the extreme peak of the transcendent realm, there was nothing he couldn't handle as someone who had reached the pinnacle of poison techniques. Indeed worthy of being one of the 8 stars. Siap Chen clicked his tongue at Tang Yanhei's overwhelming aura. His level was completely different from his own. But he wasn't afraid. It was because he was serving a true monster up close. He still couldn't forget the aura that Mok Jiang'an had shown at that time. It was like death and fear itself. Compared to that, even though the aura of Thousand Poison Hand Tang Yanhei, one of the 8 stars, was impressive enough to make his skin tingle, it was tolerable. Then, Tang clan leader Tang Yanhei opened his mouth again. "I won't say it twice. If you want to save your lives, leave now." Sizzle. Sizzle. It was a warning filled with murderous intent. Faced with Tang Yanhei's aura that surged like waves, they drew out their energy and assumed a formation stance. Seeing their behavior, Tang Yanhei was inwardly exasperated. Even though he was revealing his energy to this extent and warning them, they showed no sign of retreating at all. Just who were these bastards? Hiss hiss hiss. Tang Yanhei, who was dumbfounded, released purple poison energy from both hands and spoke in a threatening tone. "You truly have lost your fear. In the hands of this clan leader. The bald monk's master is abandoning his family and running away in fear, yet his tongue is long." Jia Jiamzhang's sarcastic remark, cutting off his words, left Tang Yanhei momentarily speechless. He had wondered who these bastards were, but could it be that they were related to that monster? He had subordinates too? What the hell was going on? Wasn't it said that Mun No and he were living in seclusion alone? But why were these guys with him? Tang Yanhei's mind became complicated. Then, his mind became clear as he heard the sound of a huge boom coming from behind. Boom. If he didn't run away right now, he might be caught by that monster-like bastard and go to the netherworld. With this, Tang Yanhei brought his hand behind his waist. Among the secrets of the Sichuan Tang clan, there were many secret weapons for dealing with multiple opponents. One of them was the Thousand Flower Rain. The Thousand Flower Rain infused with his poison energy could temporarily incapacitate those guys. He had to take that opportunity to escape with Yi Sang-a. Even if there's a gap in martial prowess, I should be able to escape from these bastards. Having made this decision, Tang Yanhei was about to take out needles from inside his waist. But at that very moment, swish! At that moment, Ma Areihian's figure blurred and disappeared. Then, in the blink of an eye, he appeared right in front of him. What speed does this guy have? Tang Yanhei was surprised and tilted his head back as Ma Areihian's speed was so tremendous that even he momentarily lost sight of his figure. Swish! At that moment, a kick brushed past where his face had been. It was an extremely fast kicking technique. With this, Tang Yanhei released a handful of needles he was holding and launched a palm strike infused with poison energy to make Ma Areihian retreat. Boom! Faced with his powerful palm strike, Ma Areihian somersaulted backward to avoid it. Tap tap. Then, he kicked the ground twice and was about to unleash a proper technique when, wait a moment, stop. Someone stopped Ma Areihian. Tang Yanhei, who was about to respond, also turned his gaze to that direction at the familiar voice. It was none other than the carriage they had brought. At that moment, the carriage door opened. Creak. Then, a man in his mid-30s holding a snake-shaped staff appeared from inside the carriage. It was a face he had never seen before, but the moment he saw the staff, Tang Yanhei's eyes widened. It was because that staff belonged to Guyang Sao, the head of the Guyang family, who could be considered his arch-rival, known as the 8 Poison Snake Staff. Chapter 334. Mastermind. Part 3. That thing? Tang Yin-hei, the patriarch of the Sichuan Tang clan, displayed a glint of interest in his eyes. And for good reason. The snake-shaped walking cane grasped by that man in his mid-30s was none other than the 8-poison snake staff, the staff of Guyong Sao, the patriarch of the Guyong clan. Guyong Sao was the only one who could match Tang Yin-hei's reputation in terms of poison, and they had engaged in several duels over the long years, making it impossible for Tang Yin-hei not to recognize the cane. But why was this young man holding Guyong Sao's cane? Could he be a descendant of that old man Guyong? Just as Tang Yin-hei was wondering, it happened. Swish. Ma Are Hyan, the masked man, unfurled his pung sinpo and used extreme high-speed movement to create distance, saying, "Will the elder do it? Hasn't this matter between your lord and me already concluded?" At Tang Yin-hei's words, Ma Are Hyan suppressed the energy he had unleashed and pointed at Tang Yin-hei with his palm, as if conceding to him. Seeing this, Tang Yin-hei snorted. Although he was quite surprised by the tremendous lightness skill, he found it absurd that Ma Are Hyan was displaying an attitude of conceding to someone. This is no longer tolerable. Does the venerable one take me so lightly? Your opponent will be this old man. Tang Yin-hei flinched for a moment. He had only thought about getting away from that monster somehow, so he hadn't realized it, but this voice was extremely familiar. Could it be? Tang Yin-hei looked at the man's face. It wasn't a face he recognized. Which meant, that face, could it be a human skin mask? As expected of you, little brother Tang. I thought you would recognize me by voice alone. Big brother Guyong? It's been a while, little brother Tang. Upon hearing how he was addressed, an exclamation escaped Tang Yin-hei's mouth. He had suspected it, but it was indeed his one and only longtime rival, the 8-poison snake staff Guyong Sao. He had thought their next meeting would be when they were both more advanced in age, but who would have imagined they would face each other like this, with Guyong Sao wearing a human skin mask? However, this wasn't a major issue. Rather, Big brother Guyong, why are you with them? It just turned out this way. Just turned out? That's right. Anyway, didn't we agree to duel at White Jade Hall in due time? That's true, but big brother Guyong, isn't there still time left until the appointed date? This old man has his circumstances, so it seems difficult to wait until then. Simmering. As soon as he finished speaking, a green poisonous aura flowed out from Guyong Sao's entire body. He had instantly drawn out up to 7 of the 8 poisons. From the beginning, they knew each other's abilities better than anyone, so he had unleashed his poisonous energy close to his full strength. Faced with his momentum, Tang Yin-hei's complexion darkened. Until Guyong Sao revealed himself, Tang Yin-hei had thought that with his difference in martial arts, he could repel them if he went all out. But the situation had completely changed. If that old man, his equal in poisonous techniques, was determined to stop him, there was no escape. Moreover, swish. Tang Yin-hei shifted his gaze to look at the masked Ma Are Hyan. If that villain who had surpassed the wall during their duel intervened and launched a sneak attack, he would suffer a miserable defeat. As if sensing his thoughts, Guyong Sao spoke. This will be the final duel of our lives, little brother Tang. None of you should interfere. We'll do as you wish. Understood. Kihei. This will be quite a spectacle. Siap Chen and Mong Muyak gave brief responses, while the heretic monk Jia Jiamzhong rubbed his hands together as if excited. Ma Are Hyan nodded his head with a slightly regretful look in his eyes. Having reached enlightenment and experienced a surge in his martial arts, he had inwardly wanted to test himself against a master of similar or higher level, so he was disappointed to miss this opportunity. However, even though they had expressed their intention not to interfere, Tang Yin-hei was not one to take their words at face value. Big brother Guyong. They are no different from enemies to our sect. I cannot easily trust their words. And do you think we can properly focus and engage in a duel in this situation? Patriarch Tang Yin-hei wanted to avoid this confrontation at all costs. The monsters had to be avoided until their duel concluded, but if he remained trapped here, the worst-case scenario could unfold. Big Brother Gaon. Please postpone our duel, even if just for the sake of our past ties. I implore you with utmost sincerity. Clap. Tang In-hei clasped his hands together and bowed his head, even performing a formal salute. Seeing his behavior, the heretic monk Jia Jiamzhong gulped down some wine from his gourd and sneered. TSK TSK. He's really going all out to avoid being caught by his master. What did you say? Tang In-hei glared fiercely at him. Then Gaiang Sao spoke, drawing out even more poisonous energy and momentum. Your opponent is this old man. Big Brother Gaiang. Listen, little brother Tang. The only choice given to you is to fight against this old man. If you refuse and attempt to flee, even if it's not a duel, I will have no choice but to detain you here as per my agreement with that person. Now, let's begin. Whoosh. With those words, Gaiang Sao unleashed a fearsome momentum, infusing his green poisonous energy into his serpent cane and executed a sweeping strike. Damn it. Faced with his attack, Tang In-hei had no choice but to respond. He, too, exuded a purple, no, indigo poisonous aura and unleashed his own technique to block the strike. Boom. Sizzle. As their poisonous energies collided, the surrounding grass withered and the ground began to turn black due to the impact of their clashing forces. Although they had only exchanged a single move, the two rivals who had completed their probing could discern each other's improved skills. That old man Gaiang has become even stronger. As expected, he has grown stronger. But now that I have nearly perfected the 8 poison secret technique, let's settle this once and for all. Thus, the life-or-death duel between the two arch-rivals began. Father. Mu Jin called out to his father, Mu Jik. In response to his call, his father Mu Jik, without taking his eyes off the dark valley that seemed like an endless abyss, opened his mouth. What is it? How long do we have to stay here? How would I know? I don't understand why our family has to go this far. Then you're saying we should neglect the duty passed down from our ancestors and leave this place? Mu Jin. The moment we leave here, the Central Plains will turn into a wasteland. I know that, but this is almost like volunteer work. Volunteer work or not, it doesn't matter. If many people can find peace because of us, that's enough satisfaction. It's not very satisfying to me. Then what will you do about it? Are you saying you'll just leave? No, not that. It's just a bit frustrating. Grandfather and you have been stuck here for so long. Then train hard and figure out a way to deal with that thing. Then our family won't have to stay here like this. Mu Jin furtively glanced down at the valley that resembled a bottomless pit. If that were possible, would they be doing this? The ancestor who could be considered their progenitor was born with such innate strength that it was said all the energies of heaven and earth had gathered within him, so he had no equal. However, his descendants, including Mu Jin himself, were different. Perhaps because their bloodline had grown thinner with each generation, they had become much weaker compared to their predecessors. Sigh. I'll stop talking about it. You too. Mu Jik chuckled. Then Mu Jin stood up and spoke. Even if it's like this here, until when do we have to continue serving the Tang clan? No matter how much it's a request, no, a dying wish from the wife of our progenitor, is the Tang clan really in that much danger? There aren't many among the martial artists who can threaten them. Of course, it's rare for them to be in that much danger. Right? You think so too, father? But it's not always the case. What do you mean? Have you already forgotten about the day of the Great Calamity? That was when inhuman beings went berserk and caused chaos. Yes, that's right. But at that time, the one your great-grandfather confronted to protect the Tang clan was not an inhuman being, but a deformed human. Deformed? I see. Tap tap. Mu Jik tapped his forehead with his finger and said, he had an eye here too. Where in the world is there a person with 3 eyes? Does it sound like a lie? But what can you do? This father of yours also saw that three-eyed freak 50 years ago. You saw it? Where? Here. What? Mujin couldn't hide his surprise at those words. This place was a hidden forbidden area. How could someone enter this place that even ordinary people, no, even exceptional martial artists couldn't see with their naked eyes? So what happened? What else could have happened? This father of yours drove him away. Phew. At that, Mujin let out a sigh as if it was anticlimactic. Well, of course. It was hard to imagine his father, who had unlocked the force-suppressing bracelet up to the second stage, something no one in their clan had achieved for generations, being defeated by someone. However, it wasn't easy to drive him away. As he spoke, Mujik slightly lifted his upper garment. Then, a long scar running across the center of his chest was revealed. Seeing this, Mujin's eyes widened as he asked, "Wasn't this the scar you got from fighting great-grandfather?" "No. It's the wound inflicted by that bastard." "But why did the scar remain like this?" Their clan possessed a recovery ability bordering on regeneration to an extraordinary degree. Although it was rare for them to get wounded, even if they did, it healed quickly, so it was unusual for scars to remain unless it was a severe injury. That's why Mujin had always found the scar on his father's chest puzzling. "I don't know. It could be because that bastard's peculiar energy slowed down the healing, or it could be because the wound was that severe." At his words, Mujin's expression hardened. His father was called invincible, a title that was no exaggeration. To think there was a being who not only left a scar on his invincible father but also managed to escape alive. He must be truly formidable. As Mujin inwardly marveled, his father Mujik solemnly advised, "Don't neglect your training. Our clan is growing weaker with each generation. Even if it's not that three-eyed freak, there's no guarantee that a new powerhouse won't emerge at any time." Boom 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 boom. That new powerhouse is right here. Mujin inwardly clicked his tongue. He had unlocked the force-suppressing bracelet up to the third stage and was displaying his full strength, yet his opponent was withstanding it. No, as the enemy gathered that power into one and unleashed a violent black aura from his entire body, he became even stronger. It wasn't mere luck that he had blocked that punch earlier. Swish swish swish. Fast. Moreover, in terms of speed, the enemy was a step above Mujin. Even if he could vaguely discern the enemy's location with his naked eye, it was difficult to catch up with the extreme high-speed movement. Whenever Mujin thought he had caught him, the enemy would scatter using the shifting image technique. Furthermore, swish, swish, clang, crash. Mujin stopped running, tilted his head to the side to avoid the sword, and then struck the incoming sword with his fist. Damn it. He had to constantly deal with the two black-colored swords imbued with this vicious aura, which further diverted his attention. In that case, a different approach was needed. Crack. Creak. The biceps and forearms of Mujin's blackened right arm bulged greatly. Not only did his muscles swell, but the surrounding energy began to converge towards his fist. Rumble. Sensing an ominous feeling, Mok Jiangyun, who had been using extreme speed and the clear water surpassing steps to exploit openings, tried to create distance. That very moment, Mujin abruptly swung his fist towards the ground. Third stance of the secret technique, ground destruction. Quang. As soon as his fist struck, an astonishing event unfolded. With the point of impact as the center, the ground within a radius of about 30 jang began to shake violently as if an earthquake had occurred, and soon, along with cracks, crumble, crash crash crash, the shattered fragments of the ground all shot upwards. What? Mok Jiangyun was dumbfounded. Who would have imagined that his movements would be obstructed in such an absurd way? With no room to even set foot as the entire ground shattered and debris flew up, Mok Jiangyun had no choice but to momentarily stop and use his demonic swords to block the fragments. That very instant. Boom. Got you. Mujin appeared in front of the halted Mok Jiangyun. Along with his appearance, Mujin's fist flew towards Mok Jiangun's face. Swish! It was at that precise moment. Mok Jiangun kicked off the evil commandment sword that had flown close to him and soared upwards. He dodged it? Having eliminated any footing, Mujin hadn't expected him to utilize the ghost-hungry sword. However, would he let him escape? Such a feat was possible after unlocking the third stage of the force-suppressing bracelet. Boom! Mujin kicked the air. Leaping into the air, Mujin interlocked his hands and spun his body while rotating. Fifth stance of the secret technique, revolving flying dragon. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. As he rotated his body, creating a whirlwind, a tremendous gale arose. The force was so strong that the sound of the air being torn could be heard all around. Seeing Mujin swiftly catch up to him, Mok Jiangun clicked his tongue and tried to change direction to evade. However, whoosh! The whirlwind generated by Mujin was strangely drawing in everything around it. Due to the immense pulling force, Mok Jiangun's figure, who had tried to change direction, was about to be sucked into the center of the whirlwind. Ah! A glint flashed in Mok Jiangun's eyes. The reason for the pulling force seemed to be because the whirlwind was generated inwardly. The moment he was sucked into it, it would be the end. However, while an ordinary person would be desperate to escape from this, the weakness of rotation is. Swish! Mok Jiangun stretched out his hand, and the evil commandment sword that had been flying in the air was drawn in. Thud! Kicking off the air while grasping the evil commandment sword, Mok Jiangun gained even more speed due to the pulling force and swiftly flew towards the center of the whirlwind. Seems like a mistake. Seeing this, Mujin smirked. Although the center of the whirlwind could be a weak point like the eye of a typhoon, he himself, with his monstrous strength, was positioned at that center. The center was absolutely not a weakness. Rather, it could be said that Mok Jiangun had chosen the worst possible move. But at that very moment, swish! The plundering killing sword flew in. The target was not Mujin. The plundering killing sword created a foothold for Mok Jiangun, who was flying towards the whirlwind. Thud thud! Mok Jiangun kicked off the blade of the plundering killing sword twice. At that moment, his figure split into two. Swish! Swish! One of the split figures pulled the evil commandment sword and stretched forward. At that instant, the tip of the evil commandment sword trembled, and a predestined whirlwind arose. Competing with whirlwinds? Mujin scoffed. Could the predestined whirlwind generated by a mere sword block his own whirlwind created with his entire body? Huh? But there was something strange about the whirlwind. Since the directions of these whirlwinds were colliding, they should have been fiercely rotating in opposite directions, but the same direction? The whirlwinds were rotating in the same direction. This was not the right rotating chasing whirlwind sword, but the left rotating reverse chasing whirlwind sword. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Thanks to this, the two whirlwinds cleverly adhered to each other without pushing each other away, and an unexpected event occurred. A passage opened up in the middle. Through that passage, swish! A black line appeared. Seeing this, Mujin immediately stopped rotating. I knew it. He had thought that if an opening was created, this technique of concentrating power into a single point would be used in some way. If not for this, there was no way to deal a fatal blow to him. Mujin's eyes sparkled. Then, clang! Mujin clapped his palms together as if applauding. Along with the sound of metal, the blade of the evil commandment sword was suddenly caught between his palms. Although tremendous power flowed through his hands as the enemy's strength converged into one, it wasn't a significant problem to withstand it with the force of the third stage of the force-suppressing bracelet unleashed. Mujin spoke with a smile. Do you think the same technique will keep working? Grip! With those words, Mujin, while grasping the sword with his left hand, tried to swing his fist towards Mok Jiangun's chest. However, before it could even touch, gush! Mok Jiangun's face turned pale, and black blood flowed from his mouth. Judging by the rapid depletion of his energy, It seemed he had suffered severe internal injuries. The victor had finally been decided. Having used techniques that strain the body in succession, it's only natural that he couldn't endure. Stab. It was at that very moment. Mujin looked down at something sharp that had pierced through his chest. It was a sword imbued with vicious black sword energy. This? How? As he was bewildered, Mok Jianan spoke, lifting the corners of his mouth. Although it takes quite some time compared to directly unleashing it, it's possible to concentrate power into one point even with the demonic swords. The effort of deliberately becoming bait was worth it. Bait? Mujin's expression twisted in pain. If concentrating power into the demonic sword had failed, Mok Jianan could have died, yet he had risked his life and became bait just to test that?